Hello, good morning everyone, and welcome to RMP Insight Sessions. Also, happy National Apprenticeship Week. We appreciate it's a super busy time, and we're so grateful to have you all here. I think there was over 150 of you sign up to join today. So during a really busy week, we're super grateful. So thank you everyone. I work closely with some of you on the call today, but many of you might be joining for the first time. So if you've never met me before, I'm Emma Miles-Walton. I'm a client partner and B2B marketing lead here at RMP. And I'm also joined by my colleague, Tatiana.
Hi everyone, nice to have you join us. I'm Tatiana, I'm the marketing manager at Rate My Apprenticeship.
Awesome. So together, Tatiana and I are going to take you through the top apprenticeship trends for 2024. So if you're craving any insights, intel, or just want to kind of upgrade some knowledge or see where things are going, you're absolutely in the right place. Over the next hour, Tatiana and I will take you through a bit of an introduction to ratemyapprenticeship.co.uk for those of you that have never spoken to us before or worked with us. We're then going to spend the bulk of this morning talking through our top apprenticeship trends for 2024. We're going to be covering all things from kind of the rise of apprenticeships, what apprentices want to see more of. We're going to talk about retention rates, social mobility, and loads of others that we haven't included in there. We're then joined by a live expert panel from around 11:30. So we've got Nathan from BAE Systems joining us, Katie from Career Compass, and Janet, who's a level 4 PR and communications apprentice at the Walt Disney Company. So get your questions at the ready for them, and any other questions you have for Tatiana or myself or the panel will be covered before we wrap at about 12. So before we get into it then, many of you here will be familiar with RMP, and for some of you this may be your first time ever joining the RMP community of employers. Everything we do here at RMP is to connect employers with early talent for their apprenticeship programs, but we also work really closely with partners on internship programs and graduate programs as well. A huge part of what we do, though, and the main focus of today, is our careers platform, ratemyapprenticeship.co.uk. Rate My Apprenticeship is a careers platform for school and college leavers. As well as learning more about apprenticeships, future learners can also read over 40,000 reviews from past and present apprentices and apply directly to job opportunities through the platform. At Rate My Apprenticeship, we're all about these three things: providing real life insight via apprenticeship reviews, giving careers advice to school and college leavers, and ultimately promoting apprenticeship jobs. We have over 1.4 million users every single year now, alongside a growing community of employers, careers advisors, parents, and most recently, parents via our Parents Hub as well. From an employer's perspective, we love to showcase your opportunities and what it's really like to work at your organisations as an apprentice. We encourage you and your apprentices to leave reviews on the platform for future learners to get a real life account of what it's like to work for you. These reviews are hosted alongside your jobs on your employer profile pages, but they also populate our annual Best Apprenticeship Employer rankings. Here are the current best 100. I know there's some of you on here that are on today's webinar. But this is essentially the rankings that showcase the best employers that offer apprenticeships. And if this is something you'd like to get involved in or would be interested in, you might notice there's a comment section on the right-hand side. So feel free to drop a note if you're interested in how you can become a best apprenticeship employer as well. So hopefully for those of you that know us, that's given you a little bit of a reminder of everything we do from a Rate My Apprenticeship perspective. And for those of you that are new here, hopefully that's given you a little bit of an introduction. So let's jump into the trends. For today's session, we have analysed key industry trends and taken a deep dive into our own insights to provide the top trends for you to be aware of for 2024. So let's get started. This is trend number one. So interest in apprenticeships is soaring. So starting with some super positive news and the name of today's session, because apprenticeships are on the up. We've seen this in a few different ways. So you have probably all noticed that the conversations from all stakeholders are steering closer towards apprenticeships. It's getting a lot of noise at the moment. And there's also definitely an appetite to create new programs within more industries. Last year, we saw cohorts increase with new opportunities in the likes of law and banking, with some employers actually offering apprenticeships in these industries for the first time ever. We've also personally seen an 80% year-on-year increase, specifically in blog traffic on Rate My Apprenticeship. So that really shows that there's an increased interest in not just applying for apprenticeships, but learning information about apprenticeships as well. We also had a surge of interest and around GCSE results day. So this really suggests that kind of post-16 options are getting more interest from students than they previously have. We've been, running Rate My Apprenticeship for over a decade now, and this is the first time we've ever seen such a huge spike during this time. It's telling us the interest in 16-year-olds, but we're also noticing a spike during GCSE results day from parents and schools exploring further the apprenticeship route. Another really interesting thing that we found is that 40% of students interested in undergraduate study are also now interested in apprenticeship options. So the tide is changing a little bit. There's apprenticeships are on the up, there's a lot more interest from all those kind of levels. And the key takeaway here really for you, if you're thinking about what can you do with this kind of new and reinvigorated interest in apprenticeships, is think about key points in the year. So we used to always talk about the UCAS deadline, but now, GCSE results day, A-level results day, these are all times to be really thinking about making sure you have an active presence while students are researching as well as applying as well. So another thing to think about is kind of what resources can you share to help students on their journey. A great way to do this is through, articles, real life stories. Also, the reviews play a huge part in this. As well as the 80% spike in blog reads, we've also seen 500,000 review readers every year. So it just shows how that kind of research piece and wanting to learn more about apprenticeships is still so prevalent, and it's only on the up. The second trend then is supply is not always meeting demand. So despite apprenticeship interest being on the rise, it seems that supply is not always matching up. There's a bit of a lack of awareness on how to find opportunities when it comes to apprenticeships. And there's still a bit of a gap from employers that are offering early talent programs, but they still aren't recruiting apprentices. So a few stats to kind of talk about this then. So 61% of former apprenticeship applicants in a recent survey cited there aren't any apprenticeships near me as a top 3 reason they didn't pursue an apprenticeship. And also 1 in 3 students previously interested in studying an apprenticeship said they were prevented from doing so due to a lack of roles in their desired careers. So really interesting, even though the opportunities are out there to a certain extent, that there's a demand for these opportunities, but they're finding the supply isn't always there. So what can we do about this? What's the key takeaway? I think more awareness is needed about apprenticeship opportunities across all industries, but also locations are so important in this space. Locality is a challenge in general. I'm sure loads of you will have experienced this. Locality is a challenge in the apprenticeship market, with students often searching via things like postcode. We actually find on Rate My Apprenticeship, postcode is one of the main ways in which our audience search for jobs. So there's definitely an increased need to kind of think about locality, think about awareness building, and also the industries that don't have an apprenticeship program yet. The demand is there, so you can definitely kind of maximize that. It also shows there's an increased need for promotion of apprenticeship roles and awareness building all year round. I think a lot of people are only promoting their opportunities when they're live for applications, but actually people are doing the research and looking into locations, looking into industries way before then. So important to kind of build that awareness all year round as well. Trend 3, and this one's probably not very surprising, Gen Z want to see more from employers on social media. So in our annual survey, over 30% of students expressed wanting to see more from employers on social. I don't know if you've seen, but research has shown that TikTok is becoming the new Google for Gen Z. So while you may have, previously relied on future apprentices finding you through a Google search, behaviors are definitely changing, and where your audience are and spending a lot of their time is changing as well. We're hearing YouTube coming up a lot more, TikTok, other platforms. We even ourselves have noticed an overwhelming increase in engagement on TikTok and Instagram in particular with our apprenticeship focus. So there's some examples on screen now. You can't quite see them in live motion, but you can find them later. Here's some videos that we've been producing, and some of them have been viewed over, 1 million times across student-facing platforms. So how can you leverage, the TikTok generation? How can you leverage this and make sure your brand is being recognized and that your future joiners are learning more about you on social media platforms? So a few kind of practical tips here, because content that we've seen resonate, particularly among the student demographic, and by that I mean kind of all early careers, but particularly prevalent in the apprenticeship space, is things like day in the life of content, office tour videos. Using current apprentices gives a real true feel to your organisation. There's a couple of examples on screen now from a content day we produced in collaboration with HSBC, using real life examples of their own future talent to bring to life the roles that they have and also the organisation's culture. So this content can be used all year round to kind of build your brand, give insight like no other into your programme. But this also means that by the time you open for application, your content and your story's already been told to some extent by your current apprentices. Now, one challenge I want to highlight here is we know that some employers do have barriers to creating your own accounts on platforms such as kind of TikTok. So if that is the case, you can still, if you produce this type of content, you can still feature it on your own websites. You could promote it through social media channels of your media partners. So even if you do have some restrictions, there are ways to still ensure you're not missing out on being seen where your audience are essentially. So a couple of key takeaways from this trend then. I alluded to this one earlier, but be where your target audience are. Ensure you have a presence across social media to reach future apprentices and to really upskill and give advice about who you are and what you do. The content that's working best is authentic content, user-generated content. So open days, day in the life of, using your current apprentices or current people that work for you works really well. And if you do have any kind of challenges on any social media platforms, work with partners to not only produce, but they can showcase your brand on social where you might not be able to. So that's kind of our first trends. And you may have noticed a lot of those trends are centered around attracting apprentices into your business. But what about when they're actually in your business? I'm going to talk a bit now about quite an alarming trend. Because trend 4 is apprentices are dropping out of programs. Now, is this one relatable? Is this one a bit shocking? Feel free to share any kind of insight in the comments on this. But we've done quite a bit of research, and one think tank piece has said that 47% of apprentices are dropping out of schemes, while the ISC reported recently its members are closer to 40%. So either way, it's still such a high number. So ultimately, what can you do about it? Why is this happening, and what can you do about it? So when looking at the data, 70% of those who drop out report problems with the quality of their training, and 38% of apprentices found their travel costs challenging. So we looked at this data and we looked at these trends and we thought, let's delve into the 40,000 reviews on Rate My Apprenticeship to see what might be causing these dropouts. And there were definitely some patterns that came out. So firstly, we noticed the importance of leadership. Many of the reviewers feeling like they didn't receive enough mentorship or support. So one apprentice review said the apprenticeship programme is not well structured. There's never any set meetings with my assessor. She's really busy. It's hard to get regular meetings. And they also said, I teach myself the content to complete my apprenticeship. When leadership was cited as going well, however, there was reference to things like senior managers who act as coaches alongside more junior employees being mentors. All of these things were cited among the higher rated reviews. We also saw reviewers saying that they didn't always feel like they were developing skills for life in their apprenticeship programme. The best rated programmes offered apprentices with responsibility, practical experience, allowing them to build and develop a blend of soft skills. So things like communication and teamwork came up time and time again, as well as technical skills, things like Excel, software, programming. It's important to show investment and offer ongoing coaching as part of creating that longer term continuous growth plan, and essentially keep your apprentices with you. So beyond learning, apprentices also made a lot of references to wanting to feel included. Now, this has definitely been a big challenge for a lot of people with, different hybrid working setups, but they want to feel part of the culture. They want to feel able to socialize. So one thing that really brought this to a bit of a sad review, this one, was I've not been invited to any social or team event at work since the second month of my employment, and even that was only by accident. So quite like a sad review, this, because it's not making them feel included, it's not making them feel part of the culture. Another reason why they might potentially decide to leave their program. So lots of reasons here as to what might make an apprentice drop out of their program, and a few takeaways on how to encourage them to stay include things like offering support, leadership, skills building, making apprentices feel included and socialized with, are just some of the kind of key takeaways. And there's so much more data on this, which we're more than happy to share with you. So I'm going to pass over to Tatiana now, and a big welcome back to her to cover some of the remaining trends, and you'll see from me in a little while.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Emma. Some really interesting trends that you shared there. Hopefully you've all gained some interesting insights so far. And now we are going to move into our fifth trend for today, which is that salary is a top concern for school leavers. Now, this trend is probably not going to come as much of a surprise to those of you watching, considering the current financial climate. But another key trend that we are really noticing in the apprenticeship space is the increased importance that's being associated with salary. So just generally, we're seeing financial considerations weighing more heavily on the minds of students and apprentices. So the Institute of Student Employers actually reported that dissatisfaction with pay has become the second most common reason for early talent hires leaving their company. So issues around salary likely feeding into some of those dropouts that Emma just mentioned in the last trend. Now, our own annual student survey showed that salary was the strongest driving factor to an employer, with 33% of students rating salary as their leading factor. So how are we seeing, these financial concerns being reflected in apprenticeship salaries? Let's take a look. So our reviews on Rate My Apprenticeship do reveal a positive trend towards increased salaries, with the average apprenticeship salary now sitting at £22,184, about a 7% increase from the previous year. Of course, this is going to vary according to the different levels. So you can see on this slide here a breakdown of average salaries across each of the apprenticeship levels, with a comparison to last year's data as well. So now might be a good time to take a quick screenshot if you do get asked about salaries a lot. And as you can see from the slide, intermediate level apprenticeships have seen the highest salary increase, while higher level apprenticeships seen a very marginal decrease. But overall, most apprenticeship salaries have gone up and are expected to keep rising, especially with the apprenticeship hourly minimum wage going up to £6.40 in April 2024. So this trend towards increased salaries is very much backed up also by the Institute of Student Employers. They reported that most of their employers, so 77% of employers, have responded to the cost of living crisis in some way, so either by implementing salary increases or providing some form of financial support. And despite this, though, despite there being some positive steps forward there with salaries, as Emma did just mention earlier, nearly 40% of apprentices are still finding travel costs challenging. So there's definitely still some strain being felt on the apprentice side. So one apprentice reviewer in the reviews on Rate My Apprenticeship wrote, "The downsides are the early pay. You may not truly feel like your work is being valued when you look at your salary, but all in all, it's a great opportunity." So what can we take away from this trend? For those of you involved in apprentice development or recruitment, offering competitive and considerate salary packages is becoming increasingly important. Trying to line your schemes with industry average salaries or implementing measures to help support with day-to-day costs can really help enhance the appeal of your apprenticeship programs. So the importance of providing additional financial support does lead us quite nicely into our next trend, which is that there is socioeconomic disparity from interest to entry. So external reports have shed a bit of a light on quite a concerning gap between the interest in apprenticeships from students from low socioeconomic backgrounds to the actual number of hires. So 46% of students from the most disadvantaged areas are interested or considering apprenticeships versus 41% from the advantaged areas. The cost of living crisis likely playing a bit of a part here in the higher interest from disadvantaged students. And yet, despite disadvantaged students showing to be more likely interested in apprenticeship options, we're not really seeing this reflected in the entry numbers. So the Sutton Trust reported that twice as many degree apprentices are from the wealthiest areas compared to the poorest. And when we digged a little bit deeper into, what the root causes for this are, it does suggest maybe a slight lack of education or support for disadvantaged students being partly to blame here. So 34% of apprentices from lower socioeconomic backgrounds were more likely to have received no support for apprentice applications compared to 26% of apprentices from higher socioeconomic backgrounds. And this was shown in the survey from UCAS. So what can we take away from this? So there's quite a big gap there between interest and actual entry into apprenticeships, with the top level apprenticeships particularly, needing a bit more accessibility. So more education is needed to help encourage social mobility. And there might be some room for employers to work more with schools to help provide, really high quality careers advice. Some more outreach that targets, people from disadvantaged backgrounds is needed, particularly with those top levels of apprenticeships. Now, an employer that we've seen do this particularly well is Access Accountancy. Their aim was to boost interest and knowledge in accountancy as a career, with a particular focus on reaching students from cold spots around the UK, where people are less likely to be hired, and to help promote diversity across all levels of the sector. So we worked with them to create a bespoke creative campaign that helped them reach over 300,000 school leavers, 22% of which were eligible for free school meals. So just one example there of an employer doing some really great outreach. Now, we've talked about some interesting trends that have been influenced in particular by maybe the state of the wider economy. And this next trend is going to be very topical for all of you as well, which is trend number 7, the digital wave, AI reshaping recruitment. Now, we really can't have a webinar all about market trends in 2024 without discussing the rising impact of AI. So what shifts are we seeing in the apprenticeship landscape now that AI has really established itself over this past year or so? Well, the first thing is that we have seen quite a big increase in interest for tech-related roles on Rate My Apprenticeship, so particularly IT, software, even cybersecurity apprenticeships, with impressions for some specific search words like cybersecurity nearly tripling over this autumn term versus last autumn. So some tech-related roles we've seen perform particularly well amongst students in recent months included EY's Digital and Technology Degree Apprenticeship, and also Barclays' Technology, Cyber and Security Analyst Apprenticeship. But there's been lots and lots of great examples of tech roles getting a lot of interest from students. Now, between the rapid technological advancements, that we're seeing in this sort of wider market, and Gen Z also just naturally having a higher level of IT literacy, we do anticipate a bit of a boom for apprenticeships in the IT sector, with apprentices hopefully being able to play an important role in helping companies to adapt to this new age of technology. Now, another key shift that we are seeing around AI is more employers turning to AI to improve hiring efficiencies. So ISE's recent survey showed that nearly a third of employers are now using it in their own recruitment. 83% of them saying it increased speed and efficiency, and 64% saying it helped them analyze large volumes of data. So some positive advances here for companies, particularly that might have limited resources or manpower when it comes to recruiting new hires. But still, most employers did recommend some caution, particularly around the general reliability of AI, and also just the importance of having some human approach in the recruitment process as well. So what are our key takeaways from this trend? Well, the demand for IT roles is soaring, and as AI continues to evolve, the need for digital and technical skills is going to become more and more important. Companies can embrace this trend by opening up more apprenticeship opportunities in tech and digital roles to a pool of what is already a pretty tech-savvy Generation Z. And finally, also, whilst AI offers a promising step forward for enhancing recruitment efficiency, maintaining some caution with its accuracy and a good balance with the human element is going to be key for recruitment process. So moving into our 8th and final trend for today, which is Gen Z seeks hybrid working and work-life balance. Now, 2024, it's clear that hybrid working has become the norm for apprenticeships, very much mirroring, a broader kind of workplace trends that we've seen since the onset of the pandemic. ISE's research revealed an increase in hybrid working amongst new hires, with 74% of employers stating that their apprentices work from home 1 or 2 days per week. Very much also matching rising expectations of Gen Z here when it comes to flexible working policies. So Deloitte's 2023 Gen Z and Millennial survey, for instance, showed that 77% of UK Gen Zs would look for a new job if they were asked to return to the office full time. This has also been reflected in our reviews on Rate My Apprenticeship, with one apprentice stating, "We were given 2 weeks' notice to go from hybrid working to being in the office 5 days a week. This does not work for me and my family. It also caused a huge upheaval for employees' lives. We have readjusted to hybrid working to help with the cost of living." So the desire for a flexible working setup is also very much part of a broader demand for work-life balance amongst Gen Z, with 26% of IC employers noting recent hires are less willing to work additional hours compared to previous cohorts. Now, another Rate My Apprenticeship review mentioned that the opportunities of flexi time and hybrid have significantly improved the quality of my work-life balance. And yet, despite this, pretty widespread adoption of hybrid working for apprenticeship schemes, an analysis of over 1,000 apprenticeship jobs on Rate My Apprenticeship this past year showed that less than a third of job ads are actively referencing hybrid or flexible working policies in their descriptions. So what can we take away from all of this? So, the pandemic has very much reshaped working policies in the apprenticeship landscape, with an increasing number of Gen Zs now actively seeking, flexible working policies anyway. Despite that, the majority of job descriptions are lacking specific references to hybrid working. So, for any companies aiming to attract school leavers, we would recommend that you communicate these working policies in job descriptions to help engage and interest potential candidates to your roles. And that is it for our trends today. So just as a quick reminder of all of the 8 trends that you've seen, we had trend number 1, interest in apprenticeships is soaring, supply not always matching demand, students and apprentices wanting to see more from employers on social, apprentices are dropping out of their programs. We've had salary is a top concern for school leavers, socioeconomic disparities existing from interest to entry. There's some impacts there from AI and how that's reshaping recruitment. and Gen Z seeking hybrid working and work-life balance. So hopefully that's given you loads of useful insights. And I'm going to now hand back over to Emma so we can get started on our next segment.
Thanks so much, Tatiana. It's almost time to welcome our panel. I'm really excited for that. Before we do, I just wanted to actually give you all a bit of an exclusive insight into a new initiative that we're working on in the apprenticeship space. So we're listening to all these trends, learning about the soar in apprenticeship market, and we're really broadening our approach in 2024. So we're really excited to announce our new apprenticeship ambassador program. So having experience recruiting over 1,200 students every year at UK universities to represent employers on campus, we're taking the step to have school and college students as advocates for apprenticeships and showcasing employer opportunities on behalf of organisations such as Barclays and the University of Law. We're taking all of the learnings from the trends that we've seen, and we will utilise the apprenticeship ambassadors to provide peer-to-peer recommendations and advice around apprenticeships. They really do have access to areas that we don't always have access to, you know, their own school and colleges, social media platforms. So they can really help and support you without the need for you and your teams to individually visit every single school and college. It's very hard to determine where to prioritise your focus. This is all very new, and we've actually already recruited over 70 apprenticeship ambassadors already. They've been trained, and we can't wait to see their impact as advocates of apprenticeships, accessing harder to reach areas and really promoting employer opportunities. So if you do see them on social over the coming months, say hello, give them some encouragement. And yeah, we're really excited to see their impact in their schools and on their social media platforms. Alrighty, it is time to welcome our amazing panel. I just wanted to round off the trends by saying we're more than happy to share any of those trends, research sources with you following today's session. Pop a comment and let us know, or we'll follow up with you. If you want to learn anything more about anything we've covered today, you'd be interested in how we can support you build your brand, drive apprentices to your organisations, feel free to drop me an email. I can point you in the right direction of the team, and yeah, we can follow up with a conversation. So moving on to our panel for today, we have three really special guests joining us. So we have Nathan, who is joining us from BAE Systems. We have Katie, who's joining us from Career Compass, and Janet, who's joining us as an current apprentice at the Walt Disney Company. So I'm going to welcome them all now. Hello, everyone. Good morning.
Hello.
How are you all doing? You okay?
Good, thanks.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us today. I know that there's going to be a ton of questions from our audience for you, and I know that I've also got some that I'm itching to ask as well. Before we jump into the questions, do you want to give a little bit of an intro into yourselves? I know I just gave a little bit, but just a quick kind of who you are, what you do, would be fab. Maybe we could start with you, Nathan.
Hi, yes, my name is Nathan. I am responsible for the recruitment of the apprentices into the early career space for BAE Systems.
Wicked. Katie?
Sure. Hi, my name is Katie, and I manage Career Compass, which is a social mobility charity.
Awesome. And Janet?
Hi, I'm Janet. I'm a level 4 apprentice in PR and communications at the Walt Disney Company.
Amazing. Superstar lineup. Okay, so a few questions to chat about today. I think a few of the questions and trends that we were seeing earlier is, you know, the name of today is apprenticeships are on the up. So one thing I wanted to ask you all is around perceptions of apprenticeships, and essentially kind of, do you think the perception around apprenticeships is changing? And if so, like, how is it changing? Maybe we start with you, Janet, for this one. I know when you were looking for an apprenticeship, kind of what was your initial perception, and how has that maybe changed since actually being an apprentice yourself?
I think, yeah, as an apprentice, initially I would say that looking at apprenticeships back then, it more was like, I thought, oh yeah, it's an alternative learning route and another way of getting an education as opposed to going to uni if that's not for you. And now I still believe that, but I also think there's so much more that comes with that, like the mentorship that you get from experts in the field who have done it themselves and have been doing it themselves, on top of like having your foot in the door and being able to enter an industry and knowing that you won't struggle to find a job when you come out. And I also think that, like, after speaking to some interns and even like apprentices that are here at the like at Disney, some of them have even said like if they knew that there are apprenticeships at the time, they would have done that because of like the financial aspect to uni as well, and like not everyone being able to even afford going to uni. So I think like the financial side of it as well is like another big perception that has changed since then, because I never thought of that to begin with.
Yeah, absolutely. I've heard that a few times where people have said, oh, if I knew about this, I probably would have taken this route instead. Thank you so much for that, Janet. And then Nathan, from your side, obviously as an employer, have you seen the appetite for apprenticeships or the perception within the business change over the last few years?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, the appetite for apprenticeships has increased significantly over the past few years. So I've been in this role for 3 years now, and in that time, the demand for apprentices has doubled across the business. So yeah, it's certainly the business are recognising that there is a skills gap, and the way to plug that is via apprenticeships.
Yeah, awesome. And then Katie, from your perspective, you know, from you work with a lot of schools, what about perception kind of physically in schools and colleges? Do you think that's changing, or do you think it's where it needs to be?
It's definitely changing. I'm not sure that it's where it has to be at the moment, but yes, I do work with a lot of schools and career advisors, and there has definitely been a positive shift, even if we compare it to 1 or 2 years ago, but definitely to 5 years ago, with more and more students choosing the apprenticeship route and actually understanding what that route entails, whereas they actually didn't really know what apprenticeships even are in like 2-3 years ago. So there's definitely a trend, but a positive trend, but I do believe that there is still a big way to go in terms of educating the career advisors to then offer sort of good advice to the students, and also educating the students of what actually apprenticeships entail.
Yeah, absolutely. I think in summary from you all there, it's perceptions are changing, but maybe they're not quite where they need to be, and more awareness is still needed, more education is still needed. It sounds like that's kind of what you're all thinking there. Let's talk about attraction now. So actually kind of how you get apprentices to know about your organizations, you know, how does that all work? I mean, from your side, Janet, obviously you are an apprentice, you must have been, you know, making those applications at one point. Do you have any advice for employers like looking to attract apprentices to their business, or like how did you find that process yourself?
I think the process of finding an apprenticeship, so obviously I found mine through Rate My Apprenticeship. And I think even to this day, like I'm still so shocked at the volume of companies that now offer apprenticeships that you wouldn't hear about, that I just didn't know about, that they like even offered them, and like the range of things they offer them in as well. And I think a big thing is definitely like advertising them and like having social media platforms, even having like current apprentices give them feedback. Like that's something that Disney's working on now, like us feeding back what drew you to us and what could we do better, like showcasing the opportunities that you have, the projects that could be worked on. Like I think definitely advertising is a big thing, just to echo from the trends, that like needs to, like, that really attracts apprentices, because if you see it, then you know that it's out there, you can go for it. There are so many that are out there that people don't even know about.
Yeah, absolutely. And Katie, from your side, you know, is there anything you'd like to see more of from employers, like from your work in schools? Is there anything that you'd like to say to them that needs to be done?
Absolutely. So I actually really agree with Janet. I think that there is a real desire for students to pursue apprenticeships, but they often don't even know where to look, where to start. And what they really would love to see more from employers is more support on their applications. So they're not taught how to apply for apprenticeships. So they're really lost in the application process. Just maybe giving them advice on the websites of the employers of what they're looking for in an ideal candidate. Offering tester sessions or sort of days in the office where they can learn more about the organization and then understand better how to tailor their applications, because they really do not know how to do that, unfortunately.
Yeah, a lot more education needed by the sounds of things, and some really practical tips there from Janet as well. Nathan, you are an employer. It sounds like you attract lots of apprentices into your business. Do you have any kind of insights on or advice for employers watching today on what you do to attract apprentices to your organisation at BAE?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we attract apprentices via a number of routes. So you've got your traditional in-person careers events at sites. Now, those are great because apprentices can see where they might work, what they might be doing, etc. And then we've also got, in addition to that, we've got a huge social media and online careers events schedule going on, as well as online events such as this one. On top of that, we also offer work experience schemes. That target a number of groups and sites, so people can get a real taste of what it might be like to be an apprentice and whether they like it or not. We're finding a blend of those approaches really. That's how we attract our apprentices.
Awesome. And those events you mentioned, are you doing those kind of all year round your schedule, or is it mainly focused around kind of peak application cycles?
So it's mainly focused around our application window, which opens in November and closes at the end of February. The peak of it is National Apprentice Week.
Yeah.
So that's when we do see the bulk of our applications, along with 1 minute to midnight on the last day.
Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely a trend we've seen. And that brings us quite nicely actually onto our next topic, which is around the application process. You're absolutely right. We're in the peak of it right now. This is when lots of applications are happening. Janet, I'm really interested from your perspective. When did you start, doing your research about apprenticeships, and did you find that you were doing that all year round, or when did you start applying as well?
So generally speaking, I think research-wise, it was a lot of seeing things so Rate My Apprenticeship had come up, and not going to uni had come up. And I think it was seeing things like that and then going further to do my research into apprenticeships. What are they? Because at the time when I was in sixth form, 2020 to 2022, it wasn't really spoken about as much as it is now. For example, I have a cousin that's just 2 years below me, and he went to the exact same sixth form I did. And he said that the exact same careers advisor we have was literally pushing for apprenticeships, and there was so much advice and support. And I think it just goes to show how it's progressed again. But for me, it felt more like going out of my way to research them. And then my first round of applications, I didn't begin until January, when I had enough time, and I also applied to uni, so had got my personal statement out of the way. I eventually ended up taking a gap year, and then I was prepared, and I'd researched and I knew more, and I had from October to keep going at it to apply and have a nice stretch of time, because I do definitely think that apprenticeship applications are a long process, and they require a lot of attention, because you have to obviously tailor to each one you're applying to. So I think my process was about 4 months long the second time around, because I had enough time.
Yeah, that's really interesting to hear. We always assume it's you just see a job ad and there you go, but actually a 4-month process of figuring out what you wanted to do and where to go. Katie, from your side, obviously working with students in schools, do you think there's anything they really struggle with when it comes to applying for apprenticeships? Any insights you can share on some of what their struggles might be?
Sure. I think they're really struggling in knowing how to tailor their applications. So really knowing how to sell themselves. So recently I heard a student say, oh, I'm really great. I would be such a great asset to this company. And you can see sort of from their CV that, yes, they have relevant experiences. They've done all the right things. They have the relevant skills, but they just don't know how to sell themselves. They don't know how to write that sort of outstanding cover letter. And obviously they miss out to students who are maybe better gifted in writing in English. And that's a real shame. So really tailoring applications and understanding how to do that is one of the biggest struggles for students.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I think we see, we mentioned one of the insights that earlier, blog articles, things like how to tailor your CV and cover letters is some of our most read stuff. So there's a real appetite for that knowledge on how to communicate effectively, essentially, and how to sell yourself. You're absolutely right. Nathan, have you seen much of that from your experience? How have you seen any kind of challenges when attracting apprentices, or anyone that's any kind of trends around not being able to tailor applications? Have you seen that yourself?
Not so much around the trends about tailoring the applications, because our application process is sort of, well, it is a little bit different. So I'm waffling a bit there. The main trend that we see in attracting apprentices is attracting apprentices to some of our remote sites.
Yeah.
We've got apprenticeships that are close to major population centres, and they are massively oversubscribed. And then we've got ones that are perhaps not so near population centres, and they face the opposite situation. You know, there may not be enough applications to fill the demand on those. So that's the main challenge for us. It's attracting candidates to areas of the country where there aren't very many people around.
Yeah, I think locality came up a lot in the trends earlier, and it is a challenge. And you know, often there are a lot of opportunities locally, but apprentices aren't always aware of them. So yeah, that definitely came up. Thank you all for that. It sounds like we need more kind of awareness, upskilling, lots of trends happening here. One of the insights we shared earlier as well was around that retention stat, so how some people are dropping out of their apprentices. So I'm gonna touch on that a little bit now, and then we'll open up to audience questions in a minute as well, so feel free to get those coming through. But from a retention perspective, I guess kind of Katie, maybe we'll come to you first on this one. Do you have any suggestions for employers on how best to retain apprentices when they make it into their business from learnings you've had or conversations you've had?
Sure. I think it all comes down to the educational piece up front. So if the students know and understand what to expect from their apprenticeship, then they're obviously much more likely to stay on and complete it, and then obviously stay in the company. But when students apply and they don't really know what an apprenticeship actually entails and how their day-to-day will be looking like, how their sort of work versus education balance will plan out, then they sort of come to that point where like they actually thought it would be something completely different, and then they end up dropping out and then reconsidering their choices, whether that's just sort of reapplying to another apprenticeship, whether that's going to university, whether that's taking a gap year, could be a number of different things. But I think if they know upfront what to expect, then they're way more likely to stick around.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. You know, bringing those resources, those real life experiences, make sure they're being showcased throughout. And then Nathan, from your side, you know, what do you offer at BAE Systems that really helps to give apprentices the best experience? Is there any learnings that you have there?
Yeah, I mean, the main thing is, you know, we really focus on the mentoring aspects and communication with the apprentices all the way throughout. You know, they've got access to our employee support program. You know, they've got as many resources as needs to ensure that it is the right fit for them. There is very thorough interview process, you know, that isn't going to put a square peg in a round hole. You know, there's no point applying for a business administration apprenticeship and getting offered one as a welder, because they're very different things, you know.
Yeah.
We certainly wouldn't go down that route. And when they are in place, you know, we recognize that it's important that the job is the right job for them long term. So the support is there from day one all the way through to the end of that apprenticeship, and hopefully into their successful exit role after that.
Yeah, awesome. Sounds great. And then Janet, from your side, do you have any advice, you know, for employers on how to provide the best apprenticeship experience for their apprentices from your own experiences?
I think definitely following on from what Nathan and Katie have just said, the communication and the application process itself was so good, because it meant that every step of the way I knew what was expected of me. And that's like a big thing, because even when I joined, I was never scared to ask questions. You know, sometimes you feel like you're going to ask a silly question. Like, I was never scared, because that communication was always so clear and so like ready for me to be able to like obtain. And then I also think there are opportunities for me to work on projects and for me to actually like get stuck in with things, as opposed to just like always shadowing, which is also obviously very beneficial. There are networking opportunities. There's like a really good work-life balance. And most importantly, I'd say like mentoring as well has been such a big thing, because the support that you need, like, it's obviously a lot having to study and work at the same time. So the support is a really big thing. So I think mentoring would be like my key thing.
Yeah, love that. That came up in our reviews as well, mentoring. I think there's so much value to be had there. I can see loads of comments and questions coming in, and I don't want to leave people hanging. So we're going to jump into those in a minute, but I'm going to ask you one kind of bigger picture question, which I'm really keen to hear. Just like a quick thought on from all of you. It's just if you could pick one thing to change about the current apprenticeship landscape, what would it be? It's quite a big question, but I feel like you've all given snippets into it in your answers so far. So yeah, just one thing, simple or a bit more elaborated. What would you change about the current apprenticeship landscape? Maybe Katie, we'll start with you for this one.
Sure. I think it's all around education, as we discussed, but I think what is really missing is educating parents. From my perspective. So obviously the career advisors know what they're talking about, or they're getting there and they're getting better about talking to students. Students are getting savvier, and students do want to pursue apprenticeships, and they understand, for those of them for whom it's a good fit, they understand that this is the way forward. But there's still a really big gap in the knowledge that parents have towards apprenticeships, and them being scared that this is not as lucrative as the university route. So for me, this would be the biggest piece that I would like to change.
Yeah, echo that. It's a huge piece of work to do there. One of the biggest, most important stakeholders for apprenticeship specifically. Nathan, what about you? What would you pick one thing you'd change about the apprenticeship landscape?
I think it's the awareness of the opportunities for apprenticeships in all areas of work. I notice a perception that there's a lot of people think that apprenticeships are just working with your hands on trade roles, being a welder. There's also the other end of the spectrum where people are, oh, you can earn a degree apprenticeship in digital technology solutions. You can do that, but there's not the knowledge that you can do that as well as that. I think particularly from parents, to echo what Katie's statement was, if we could really push into schools to say that there is an apprenticeship for pretty much every role you can imagine, that would certainly make my life a lot easier.
So true. So there's so many different levels, so many different industries accepting apprenticeships now. Yeah, you're absolutely right. We need to communicate that more. And then Janet, from your side, one thing that you would change about the apprenticeship landscape?
I think from my perspective, still closely tied to both of your answers, but definitely the timeline. I think if you're educated and these careers events happen and you have talks and you have webinars all in year 12, then it means that when it comes to it in year 13, you're not pressured, you're not in the unknown, like you know what you're doing and you have enough time to apply, because you don't have to research on top of going all through the application process. So I think definitely having enough time to educate, starting off early in sixth form and secondary school is a good bit sorry, a good bit of advice there. I don't know what just happened there.
You're all good. We're live. You're all good. These things happen. No, you're so right. I think earlier engagement and earlier education is so needed as well. Kind of echoing all of your points there, and Katie's especially. We're going to open up to audience questions now. I can see some coming through, and so yeah, we're gonna open up, and then I'm going to invite Tatiana back up as well. But one question we've had come through from Jordan is, what are some potential ways that we can boost awareness about apprenticeships in schools? Who's best for this one? I reckon Katie is probably a good one for this. If you could give us an answer to that one.
Sure. I believe that more employers and companies should come into schools and actually give talks. So students really love, especially that generation, to hear firsthand from anyone, really, rather than just taking the word as it is from the career advisors. So maybe having events organized in school where multiple apprenticeship providers and companies come in and decipher those myths that still exist, and that basically, as we already said, both teachers, students, and parents can come together and be educated on that front.
Yeah, I love it. And from your experience, Nathan, is there anything that you've done specifically with schools that you've noticed an impact with, or anything you've got coming up?
Yeah, absolutely. It's the invitation of schools to come to site that's made a big difference, specifically on some of our harder to fill roles in more remote sites. So it's tapping into the sort of local population and network, and making people aware that there are opportunities locally, and just showing them what's available, where they could be working, and the sort of the cool stuff they could be making ultimately and being a part of. That's made a massive difference.
Awesome. Okay, well, I'm going to open up for more questions now. So I'm going to invite Tatiana back. So if you want to ask our amazing panel any questions, if you want to ask me and Tatiana any questions from the insights and the trends today, or they're coming in thick and fast now already. So we've got another question coming through. Can I ask Janet what she did in her gap year, and did it support her application to an apprenticeship role? That one's directly for you, Janet. So yeah, if you could give us any insight on your gap year, that would be amazing.
Yeah, definitely. So at the beginning of my gap year, initially what happened was I applied for uni, I got into the uni that I wanted, and then about 3 weeks before I was like, I don't think this is for me. I think I was more attracted to the idea of moving away and living in Manchester than I was the course, and that I thought that it would practically benefit me. I took the gap year so that I could work, but also do a lot of work experience. So a lot of the things that I did in my gap year were spring pod trainings, young professional trainings, just keeping an eye out for all of those, having those come through to my inbox so that I could make sure that I was getting onto those and gathering experience. I also traveled a bit, and then on top of that had a part-time job, which allowed me to get more experience on top of the experience I already had.
Amazing. Yeah, that sounds great. I mean, I wish there's one of the things I wish I had done. So another question we've got coming through now is one around, in terms of searching for apprenticeships, are there any resources or events that stand out? Maybe Katie, with your experience in schools, is there anything that anyone's done or any events that have really stood out as being super supportive?
Unfortunately not, and I think that's where the problem lies. So there's obviously career advisors have pockets of like sort of information here and there, and some of them use a platform, some of them have never heard of you, and similarly, so some of them go to events such as, for example, there was one quite recently in London Olympia, which was about sort of helping students understand whether they want to go to university. So quite a few universities were present, and quite a few companies who are providers of apprenticeship as well were present. But as I said, there's real lack of knowledge, and it's really, really patchy, unfortunately.
Yeah. Fair enough. Any other questions? Do keep them coming through. I've got one more to answer. If there's anything you want to ask our panel or anything else, okay, we've got another one coming through. It's like magic, this. So we've got one from Anna. Do you approach schools or do they come to you? I think this one would be a good one for Nathan, because you were talking about how you invited some schools to site. But yeah, any insights on how you work with schools?
Yes, I mean, communication is a two-way street. So it can be either, really. We may approach specific schools that are in the catchment area of a site. There'd be no point approaching a school at the top of Scotland for a role in the Isle of Wight. But and then, for instance, schools may get in contact with us. We're open to that because we recognise that any contact of this nature is going to be of advantage to us as a company. It's an investment in our future workforce, and also for the schools, it really helps them guide their pupils as well. So it's great for everyone.
Awesome. Yeah, I love that. I love the communication's a two-way street. I know it's hard. Definitely something we've noticed is it's hard to reach out to every single school and college. So we definitely like to help and facilitate that. I've seen some more questions coming through. Okay, we've got one from Hannah. Do you tailor your promotion or content to the various levels of apprenticeship? I mean, Tatiana and I can definitely answer this one from our perspective, that absolutely yes. I think they're all very, very different roles. I don't know if Tats, you'd add anything to that.
No, absolutely. I think it is really important where you can to try and tailor that promotion. There is, maybe certain ways of presenting content that just resonate better with different age groups. There's also different timelines in the year that are more relevant for particular age groups as well. Of course, things like GCSE Results Day, more relevant for sort of level 2 or level 3 apprenticeships, and different for sort of A-level results. So I do think it is always really important to try and, you know, be as kind of tailored as you can to get the best results.
Yeah, awesome. Any final words from you on Nathan on that one from an employer's perspective?
I guess it's just really to echo that, really. You know, while we do tailor the promotion and the content, the vehicle of delivering it is mostly the same across the board. You've just got to predict as best you can where the audience that you're trying to pitch to is sitting, and I guess that's the tricky part of it, really.
Yeah, absolutely. I can see so many questions coming in, and we are at time. So I just want to say thank you so much, Nathan, Janet, and Katie. I feel like we could have had this conversation for probably 3 more hours with how much amazing insight you all have. Really, really appreciate your time. We'll follow up with you all as well as a big thank you. To everyone else that's tuned in today, I've seen the comment section going wild with conversations around the levy, hybrid world of working. It sounds like there's so many more conversations to be had. So we'll keep in touch, and just thank you so much for joining us today. Enjoy the rest of National Apprenticeship Week, and we'll catch up with you all soon.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.